In the heart of the Bitterroot Mountains, where the pines whispered secrets older than time and the rivers carved truths into the stone, a creature moved through the underbrush with the stealth of a shadow. It was a cougar, a female, her tawny coat dappled by the late afternoon sun filtering through the canopy. Her name, if wild things could claim such things, was whispered only by the wind. Sable. Her eyes, amber and unyielding, held the weight of a life spent surviving, hunting elk through snow-choked valleys, dodging the rifles of men, and outwitting the wolves that roamed these ridges. She was a solitary queen, her existence defined by the rhythm of her own heartbeat and the silent laws of the wild. But this day was different. Sable's usual path, a winding trail along the ridge, was disturbed by an unfamiliar sound. High-pitched yips, clumsy rustling, and the scent of something softer, less disciplined than the predators she knew. She froze, her ears swiveling like twin compasses, pinpointing the source. Below, in a clearing where the river bent and pooled, three shapes tumbled over one another. Pups, barely weaned, their fur a chaotic blend of black, brown, and gold. They were dogs, not wolves, their movements too carefree, their barks too joyous. Domestic strays, perhaps, abandoned by some careless human who'd ventured too far into the wilderness. Sable's lip curled, revealing a flash of ivory fang. Dogs were trouble. They brought men and men brought death. Yet something held her back from retreating into the forest's embrace. The pups were alone. No human scent lingering in the air. No campfire smoke or boot prints to suggest ownership. They wrestled in the grass, oblivious to her presence, their tiny bodies rolling over one another in a mock battle. One, the smallest, a black-furred runt with a white patch over one eye, tripped over its own paws and landed in a heap, yowling in frustration. Another, a golden pup with ears too big for its head, pounced on the runt, while the third, a brown brindle with a stump of a tail, barked wildly as if narrating the chaos. Sable's tail twitched. They were ridiculous, these creatures, soft and unprepared for the world she knew. But their innocence, their utter disregard for the danger that surrounded them, stirred something unfamiliar in her chest. A flicker of curiosity, perhaps, or something softer she could not name. The runt, shaking off its siblings, caught sight of her. Its eyes, wide and blue as the summer sky, locked onto hers. Sable tensed, expecting a yelp of fear, a scramble for safety. Instead, the pup tilted its head, let out a single curious bark, and bounded toward her. The others followed, their clumsy paws kicking up dirt, their voices a chorus of excitement. Sable's instincts screamed to flee or strike, but she remained rooted, her muscles taut as bowstrings. The runt skidded to a stop mere feet away, dropped into a playful bow, and wagged its tail so fiercely it seemed it might detach. The golden pup mimicked the gesture, while the brindle one circled, sniffing the air, its stump tail a blur. Sable's mind raced. These were not prey, nor were they threats. They were anomalies defying the rules of her world. She lowered her head, her growl a low rumble that vibrated through the clearing. The pups froze, but only for a moment. The runt, undeterred, inched closer, its nose twitching. Then, in a move so audacious it stunned her, it licked her paw. Sable recoiled, her claws flexing instinctively, but the pup merely yipped and rolled onto its back, exposing its belly in a gesture of trust so absolute it was almost absurd. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Sable's heart, a steady drum in her chest, faltered. She had killed deer with a single leap, faced down bears with nothing but her will. Yet these tiny, foolish creatures disarmed her without effort. The golden pup joined the runt, nuzzling against her leg, while the brindle one sat back and watched, its head cocked as if assessing her. Sable's growl faded. She could crush them with a swipe, scatter them with a snarl, but instead, she lowered herself to the ground, her massive form a stark contrast to their fragility. The runt clambered onto her back, its tiny claws scrabbling for purchase, and the golden pup curled against her side, its warmth seeping into her fur. Night fell and the pup stayed. Sable, for reasons she could not fathom, allowed it. They followed her as she moved through the forest, their clumsy steps a counterpoint to her silent grace. She hunted, bringing down a rabbit with a precision that left the pups yipping in awe. When she tore into the meat, they watched, not with fear, but with hunger. She left scraps, and they devoured them, their trust in her absolute. Days passed, then weeks. The pups grew bolder, stronger, learning to trail her through the underbrush, to mimic her crouches, to listen for the rustle of prey. Sable, in turn, found herself adapting. She slowed her pace for their short legs, circled back when they strayed, growled warnings when they ventured too close to danger. They were not her kin, yet they became her shadow. The forest, however, was not a place for sentiment. One evening, as the moon hung low in silver, a new scent cut through the air, sharp, metallic, human. Sable's ears flattened, her body low as she scanned the ridge. The pups, sensing her tension, huddled close, their playfulness gone. Footsteps crunched in the distance, accompanied by the low murmur of voices. Hunters. Sable knew their kind, men with rifles driven by the thrill of conquest. She had evaded them before, but now she was not alone. The pups, with their bright eyes and reckless trust, were a liability she could not afford. She led them to a thicket, herding them into the shadows with nudges and growls. The runt whimpered, and she silenced it with a sharp nip, her eyes blazing with urgency. The hunters' voices grew louder, their boots snapping twigs as they closed in. Sable's mind churned. She could flee, vanish into the mountains as she always had. But the pups would not survive without her. The golden pup pressed against her, trembling, and the brindle one's eyes darted toward the sounds, its body tense. The runt, ever defiant, tried to bolt, and Sable pinned it with a paw, her heart pounding. The first shot rang out, a crack that split the night. A branch above them shattered, raining splinters. The pups yelped, and Sable's instincts took over. She scooped the runt in her jaws, gentle but firm, and shoved the others forward with her shoulder. They ran, weaving through the trees, her long strides outpacing their frantic scrambles. Another shot, closer now, and the scent of gunpowder stung her nose. The hunters were tracking her, drawn by the pup's noise, their clumsy flight a beacon in the dark. They reached the river, its waters black and swift under the moon. Sable paused, her breath hot against the runt's fur. The pups panted, their eyes wide with fear. The hunters' voices were a steady hum now, their flashlights cutting through the trees like knives. Sable's gaze swept the riverbank, searching for an escape. A fallen log spanned the water, its surface slick with moss. It was a gamble, but she had no choice. She nudged the brindle pup first, urging it onto the log. It hesitated, then scrambled across, its claws scraping for grip. The golden pup followed, slower, its body shaking. Sable, with the runt still in her jaws, leaped onto the log, her balance perfect despite the weight. Halfway across, the runt squirmed, its tiny body twisting. Sable's grip faltered, and the pup slipped, tumbling toward the river. Time slowed. Sable lunged, her jaws snapping shut on the pup's scruff just as it hit the water. The current tugged, but she held fast, her muscles screaming as she dragged the runt back onto the log. The hunters' lights swept closer, their shouts growing urgent. Sable's eyes burned with defiance. She would not lose them. They reached the far bank, collapsing into the ferns. The pups pressed against her, their warmth a fragile anchor. The hunters' lights danced on the opposite shore, their voices fading as they lost the trail. Sable's chest heaved, her body coiled for the next threat. But for now they were safe. The runt licked her muzzle, a gesture so small yet so profound it cracked something deep within her. These pups, these foolish, fearless creatures, had woven themselves into her solitary existence. And as the night stretched on, Sable realized she would fight for them, kill for them, die for them. But the forest was vast, and its dangers were many. The hunters were only the beginning. The dawn broke over the Bitterroot Mountains with a reluctant light, as if the sun itself hesitated to witness what the new day might bring. Sable lay curled in a hollow beneath a granite outcrop, her tawny fur blending with the earth. The three pups nestled against her. The runt, still damp from its near drowning in the river, slept fitfully, its tiny chest rising and falling with each shallow breath. The golden pup's head rested on Sable's flank, its oversized ears twitching at the forest's murmurs, while the brindle pup, ever vigilant, sat upright, its stump tail flicking as it scanned the mist-shrouded trees. The hunter's pursuit had faded with the night, but Sable's instincts hummed with unease. The forest was never silent for long. Weeks had passed since that desperate flight across the river, and the pups had grown. Still clumsy, but stronger, their bodies filling out with the meat Sable provided. She taught them to stalk, to read the wind, to freeze at the snap of a twig. The runt, bold despite its size, mimicked her crouches with comical precision, while the golden pup's boundless energy often sent it crashing through the underbrush, scattering birds. The brindle pup was the quiet one, its eyes sharp and calculating, learning faster than the others. They were no longer just strays. They were a pack, bound to Sable by a trust that defied the wild's ruthless code. But the forest was changing. The air carried a new weight, a faint acrid tang that set Sable's nerves alight. She sensed it first in the way the deer moved, their herds splintering, their paths erratic. The wolves, too, grew bolder, their howls closer each night. Something was shifting, something larger than hunters or rival predators. Sable led the pups higher into the mountains, seeking safety in the rocky crags where the air was thin and the trails treacherous. The pups followed without complaint, their loyalty to her absolute, but their inexperience slowed them. The runt, in particular, struggled on the steep slopes, its small paws slipping on loose shale. One evening, as the sky burned crimson, Sable caught a scent that stopped her cold. Smoke. Not the faint whiff of a distant campfire, but a thick, choking presence that curled through the trees like a living thing. She climbed a ridge, the pups trailing, and what she saw froze her blood. Below, in the valley they'd left behind, flames licked the horizon, a jagged line of orange and black devouring the forest. The fire was moving fast, driven by a wind that carried sparks like malevolent stars. The pups whined, sensing her fear. Sable's mind raced. Fire was a foe she could not outwit or outrun forever. It would drive prey and predator alike into chaos, and the pups, for all their growth, were not ready for the panic it would unleash. She turned, herding them toward a narrow pass she'd hunted years before, a place where the cliffs parted to reveal a hidden meadow fed by a spring. It was a gamble. Fire could trap them there, but it offered water and space to breathe. They moved swiftly, Sable's strides long and sure, the pups scrambling to keep pace. The runt lagged, its breaths ragged, and Sable slowed, nudging it forward with her muzzle. The golden pup, usually so reckless, stayed close, its eyes darting to the growing haze. The brindle pup took the lead, its instincts sharpening, as if it sensed the path Sable envisioned. The pass was narrower than she remembered, the cliffs looming like sentinels. The air grew thick, the smoke stinging their eyes. Sable's ears flicked at every sound, the crack of burning branches, the distant screams of fleeing animals. They reached the meadow just as the fire's roar became a living thing, its heat pressing against their backs. The spring was there, a silver thread in the grass, and the pups collapsed beside it, lapping desperately. Sable stood guard, her body taut, her eyes scanning the pass. The fire was close now, its glow painting the cliffs red. They were safe for the moment, but the meadow was a trap if the flames closed in. Then she heard it, a low, guttural snarl, not from the fire but from the shadows beyond the spring. Her hackles rose. Wolves, 3 of them, their eyes glinting like embers, emerged from the haze. Their leader, a massive gray with a scarred muzzle, bared its teeth, its pack fanning out to flank them. The fire had driven them here, just as it had driven Sable and the pups. The wolves were lean, desperate, their ribs stark beneath matted fur. They saw the pups not as kin but as prey, and Sable as a rival to be crushed. The pups huddled behind her, their whimpers swallowed by the fire's roar. Sable's growl was a deep, primal warning, her body low and ready. The gray wolf lunged, aiming for the runt, but Sable was faster. She met it mid-air, her jaws snapping shut on its shoulder. The wolf yelped, twisting free, but Sable pressed the attack, her claws raking its flank. The other wolves circled, snapping at her heels, but she was a storm of fong and fury, her movements a deadly dance honed by years of survival. The pups, to her shock, did not cower. The brindle pup darted forward, nipping at a wolf's leg, while the golden pup barked wildly, distracting another. The runt, small but fierce, lunged at the gray wolf's tail, its tiny teeth drawing blood. The fight was chaos, a blur of fur and teeth under a sky choked with smoke. Sable took blows, claws tore her flank, a snap grazed her ear, but she gave worse, her strength fueled by something deeper than instinct. The gray wolf fell, its throat torn, and the others hesitated, their resolve faltering. Sable roared, a sound that shook the meadow, and the remaining wolves fled, vanishing into the haze. She stood, bloodied but unbowed, her chest heaving as she checked the pups. The runt licked her wounds, the golden pup pressed against her, and the brindle pup stood watch, its eyes fierce. But the fire was closer now, its heat a wall that pressed against them. The pass was blocked, flames licking the cliffs. Sable's gaze fell on the spring, its waters deeper than she'd realized. A memory stirred, a story the wind had carried, of a cave hidden behind the spring, a place where the mountain held its secrets. She waded in, the cold shocking her wounds, and found it. A narrow crevice, barely visible, veiled by water. She nudged the pups forward, their bodies trembling as they splashed through. The runt hesitated, its fear raw, but Sable pushed it gently, her eyes urging trust. The cave was dark, its air cool and damp. The pups pressed close as Sable led them deeper, the fire's roar muffled by stone. The passage twisted, narrowing, then opened into a vast chamber where bioluminescent moss glowed faintly, casting eerie light on stalactites that hung like ancient teeth. They were safe for now. The pups curled against her, their warmth a balm to her wounds. But as Sable's eyes adjusted to the glow, she saw something that stopped her heart. Tracks, not animal, but human, etched in the dust. Fresh. Someone else was here. The cave was no sanctuary. It was a new battleground. And as the pups slept, unaware, Sable's amber eyes burned with resolve. She had brought them this far, against hunters, wolves, and fire. Whatever waited in the dark, she would face it. For them.